a webinar on auto utilities for version 9 Retail Pro, and I just put our agenda in here. A few guys were watching when I was editing our files earlier, but it just makes it nice if we can flip around. Everybody knows the main menu, the main body of Retail Pro is just an HTML browser, so you can point it towards whatever you want. You can put whatever links in it you want. Makes it kind of handy. All right, so we're talking about auto utilities. Auto utilities includes auto min-max, auto transfer, auto purchasing, and best replenishment. So the concept, basically, we'll start there. Seems like a good place as any. Is to put a reorder point, a threshold, on a given item or many items. That will be the minimum, and then we'll have a max potentially, or not, but most will do. And so the min and the max are the points you can order between. So if I have a min of 10 and a max of 20, then I can order anywhere between there, if you see what I'm saying. So let's go take a quick look. If we just hop into inventory here, and I have a virtual machine, so I have to apologize. It's not the fastest in the world. It's not bad, considering machine inside a machine. We go to our Auto Min Max tab. Everybody should have a tab similar to this. If not, you may need to create one and or add some fields. Every item in inventory, whatever it might be, will have a min, a store min, and a store max. And then, of course, there's a new min and new max we use to do some calculations. And all right, so we could, if we wanted to, just edit these. So if I wanted to put any number in here I wanted to, I mean, I could just go through here and type in any number I want to. I can just change that willy-nilly. And certainly in the beginning, I would say that that's the best way to start, is to, just to pick a small section that you know very well, set min-max levels on them, and start running some of the auto utilities on that small little bit of data. You need to get accustomed to understanding how these things work, and the best way to do that is with a small controlled set of data. So, all right, so that's the basic concept. Now let's see if we can move on to something a little bit more exciting. So Auto PO, I think, is probably the easiest of the bunch. So Auto PO is in our purchasing menu, and so we can go purchasing Auto PO, and really it's pretty straightforward. Auto PO is not very complicated. Auto PO and Auto TO are both really similar. So we'll just kind of step through this process and see what you guys think. So we'll go. In version 9, as opposed to like previous versions, it is a wizard, and they've done a very good job on the wizard. So I'm totally good with it. The previous wizards were a little challenging, but this one's pretty solid. It's really good. So in here, we can order for a store. Like I could go in and order for a specific store, or I could order for the entire company and decide what stores I want that to be in. Okay, I'm going to leave it on company. Next. I can order for each store, so I could say I want these to be single store POs, and I want them to be sent to each store. Dropship means send directly to the store. That doesn't mean we're sending it to a customer in this case. It means to the store. Or maybe more common is to do a multi-store PO where we're marking some items for other stores. So if I have a central warehouse or a main receiving point, then I'm making a mark for multi-store PO that goes to my warehouse, if that makes sense. This down here just says how we want to write the PO number, and I'm pretty much in favor of having intelligent PO numbers, so vendor code, date, and a system-generated number is probably a great plan. Wouldn't 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 object to that. All right, so let's click in next, and the next page is just informational. What I mean is whose name is going to go on, the order. What's the order date? What's the ship date? What's the cancel date? So next, this is whether or not we choose to take into account these documents. So if we don't make these documents, then we don't consider them. If we do make them, we probably want to consider them. So in other words, if I make special orders and I have a min level, if I have 2 on hand and I've got 5 on order from customers and I have a min level of 5, well, I really need 8 minimum, right? I need 2 that I have plus 8 more to fill my min and to fill all 5 orders. So if you see what I mean, you check these off if you use them. And then again, you may not check them all off, like most people don't use registries or the web orders, so more web orders now, but if you only use special orders, for instance, if that's all you check off. I'm just going to leave these unchecked for now. Let's keep the math simple. We'll go next. And still not seeing any questions, so I'm keeping an eye out for questions, but fair enough. Now here, this is the PO filter. There's a couple of filters in here, so you got to be a little careful, but this one here is a PO filter. Now, I don't really use the filter here much. I could see where you might need it sometimes, but the most important thing for me is the date range beneath that. So for me, certainly, if an item is on order, don't reorder it, right? I don't need to double up my orders. But if it's not on order, then certainly we want to order it. So how do I know if it's on order? So if I have a PO in there from last year that I forgot to delete and it's still on that PO, does that mean I won't get it? Yes, it does if we see the PO. So that's where this little date range comes in very, very important, very valuable. And here you get to say what POs it can see. So for instance, I could say, look, I only want to see a 45-day range starting 15 days ago, 2 weeks back and 1 month forward. Now that's pretty tight. Current orders, right? So if it's late by a week, if it's late by 2 weeks, I'm calling it good. If it's late by 2 weeks and a day, it just fell off. If it's out there 30 days in the future, it's considered current reorder. If it's out there 3 months ahead, it's not going to help me in the short run, and I don't want to see it. Now, of course, everybody's definition of what current on order is slightly different, so you have to set whatever date range is appropriate to your business. But it's very important that you do set a date range here that makes sense, because you don't want to reorder something, but then again, you don't want to not reorder something because you allowed the system to see an old dead PO that's never going to be filled. All right, so then the next field here says, what are we ordering to? Are we ordering to min? Are we ordering to max? Are we ordering to a custom level? So I could order to min. So if my min is 10, my max is 20. Let's just keep the math simple. Then min is 10, max is 20. Custom, at this point, at 25%, would be 12.5, or in this case, 13, because it round up, right? So I could type in 50 if I want to be 50% between, and it'll order to 15. That makes sense. So I like to have a max because min is the threshold. This is kind of important. Min is the threshold typically. So let's just do some math here. Let's do some goofy math. Let's just write things down so that we're all on the same page. Let's say we have a min of 10 and our max is 20. Let's keep it simple for all of us. And let's say our on hand is let's say it's 11 and we're ordering to order to max. So the question, of course, is how many do you get, right? Well, I mean, at first glance, me and many other people would say, gosh, we're ordering to max, we're ordering to 20, we have 11, so we would get 9, at which point, the buzzer would sound, that's contestant, because we're not below our threshold, we're not below min, So we get nothing. We get bupkis. We get the big zero, the goose egg. You got to be below, not at, not above, below your threshold to qualify for a reorder. So that's the tricky thing right there. Min is the threshold. So now I'm going to throw in, if we don't have a max, if our max is set to 0, then all we can do is order to this one number. So if we get down to 9, it orders 1. If we get down to 5, it orders 5. But the point is, I don't know that I really want to order 1. I don't know that I want my vendor or my warehouse people dealing with onesies, if you see what I mean. If I have a max that's my ideal quantity and I have my threshold that's somewhere beneath that, when I go below that, excuse me, then I can order up to somewhere higher than min. I'm ordering half a dozen, I'm ordering 8, I'm ordering 10, 12, I'm ordering a significant quantity that's worth the labor involved. So that's just FYI. So, so let's go back to anyway, so sorry, we have a little interruptions in the tech room. They wanted to ask me some technical question, but we're kind of in a webinar, so we're going to have to forego that question. Now, this right here, this little switch, do not use min level as reorder point, does redirect that reorder point so that you could order to like max. Now, what that would mean is if we were ordering to max and we had 11, we would in fact get 9 here. Now, that's also going to lead to a lot of onesies. So if you're looking to bulk a particular area up for pre-season events or something, yeah, you can flip the switch and say, look, I don't care what the min says. Don't use the min as the reorder point, and it will roll with it. We're going to leave that unchecked. It's probably not a wise choice for us. Now, this here, for this filter here, these filters in this list, right, these are inventory filters, right? Everybody knows that if you go into inventory and you go to filtered view, you get to see these filters like this, and you get to go to the manager, and you get to name them, and you could copy them, and you can make other ones here. You know, we'll call it Auto Min Max filter. So I can go and name these, and I could filter these to different vendors. So I could go in here and add stuff, and I have no idea what vendors to use. I just loaded some data, and I'm not even 100% sure what would be a good choice of vendors here in this particular set of data. So we're just going to roll and see what happens. So I'm just going to pick a vendor. We're going to click OK. We're going to click Next and click Finish. Now, while this thing goes out and sees if there's anything at all out there to even do. Hope it works, by the way. I'm going to also explain that you could save those filters, right? And you could have different filtered groups of vendors. Like I could do 2 or 3 big vendors on one day, and I could do 10 vendors that are small on another day. And I could have those filters already saved out there. I could reuse them over and over again. So you could make this much more, you know, user-friendly than having to build the filter every time you do this. I mean, everybody who's a buyer has a plan. You have a method, you have a direction you go in when you order stuff and work through your processes. Anyway, so this thing found a number of items that qualify. So it's trying to order a certain amount here. The on hand in this case is 0. So I'm in the max, right? So if we click OK right now, it's going to write those back to the purchase order, which is my usual method of operation. You could suppress these, like this whole check bar could be taken off if I wanted to stop this from going into a purchase order. However, if you're doing, you know, 3 vendors or 10 vendors, you're going to have a mixed group of merchandise here by store, essentially. So it sometimes is a lot easier just to go ahead and click OK and then just go view the PO. So let's go view the PO. So we should have a vendor, PO for that vendor. We're going to say cancel that, and what do we got here? Date range undefined. And we had some POs here, but I just dropped a bunch of data in here, and I think it must have done something weird to my data. Interesting. Well, I apologize for that. Not sure where our PO went. But the point is, I guess, that it would write that PO to the PO list, and that PO in every respect would be, now there it is right there, right? So why am I blowing up here every time? That is really odd. All right. These are old POs. However, what would have happened here is that if this was a marked for PO being delivered to a warehouse, what it would contain is inside here, when you have a given quantity being ordered, it would contain allocations. So on the sidebar menu, we have allocation pattern and item allocation. If I open up item allocation on a given item, it should show me any allocations on that item. So here, you see that that item, although it says 132 on the actual item for the order quantity, it's not all going to one place. It is in fact allocated out to other locations. So that's a marked for multi-store PO. Now, a marked for multi-store PO has one ship-to point and can then be auto-generated out to the other stores. You can auto-generate a transfer order from here and then slips from the transfer order. So that's pretty much auto PO. You have a vendor you're ordering from, and you're delivering to various stores. Any questions on that? Anything I should go back over? I realize our PO thing kind of blew up there a little bit. That's kind of odd. But auto PO probably is the easiest of the group of auto utilities. So I guess we'll push on to auto TO real fast and see if that makes any sense or if that's got any appeal for you guys. Now, auto transfer orders, auto transfer is really similar. That's why I kind of prefer to do that one next, because it's so similar to auto PO, except that we're not ordering from a vendor here. We're ordering from like the warehouse. But other than that, it's going to be really similar. Again, we have a wizard. We click into this and we get to say, you know, what kind of document we're going to create. So my choices here are a held slip. I'm very fond of held slips. That's usually my choice. An actual transfer, meaning it's a done deal. It's booked into the system automatically. Or a transfer order. That's my second choice. Now, a transfer order or held slips both gives you that ability to review the results, make changes to it before you commit it. If you see where I'm going. So I'm going to go ahead and say held slips for now. Click next. We pick our source store. We decide available to distribute. Now, if it's a warehouse, 100%. If it's also a store, probably not the best move. There's some issues with that configuration, but you'd want to pull that back away, down, maybe do 80, whatever the appropriate number is. We could filter this. And filtering it typically is done because of logistical concerns, like I'm pulling hard goods and then I'm going to pull soft goods. So I want to do all the gift items in one pass, and I want to do all the apparel in another pass, because you know the carts and the hardware used to box that stuff sometimes is different. So let's just go to next. And again, consider these if you need to. Don't consider them if you don't need to. Same thing as the auto PO. Who am I sending things to, right? I can send things to everybody or not. Next. And again, am I filling to min level? Am I filling to max level? Am I filling to custom level? Somewhere between? Exactly the same, right? And do not use min level to initiate item transfer. Again, same switch we saw before in auto POs. So we're going to go ahead and click next. And this is considering those same documents on the other side. This is the target where the other one was the source. And finish. And it goes out and looks for things that it can transfer. So I prefer to switch these around. I like the source store number to be on the left. So this is coming from warehouse to 1, from warehouse to 8, from warehouse to 6. See what's going on. If we click OK, it should create a bunch of held transfers for us. And let's see if we can see these. We couldn't see our PO very well. I'm sure there's an issue with the data I loaded. I loaded a bunch of data and probably need to unload that data. So let's go to held. And there's a bunch of transfers that were created. Some of these are old. So these ones down here at the bottom we could ignore. But these at the top here are all transfers here from one location to another. Now, of course, these we could print these right from here. I could print these out. See, the beauty of a held slip is that you could print it out and go pick it, and then you could come back and make changes to it and update it. Now, another choice too that's very popular is people take scanners and, i.e., they generate the held slips, they print the held slips, they give the held slips to the people that are picking the merchandise, and they give them a scanner, and then they just discard the held slip. They never update it, because if they pull the wrong item, as long as they scan what they pulled, then you get inventory control. You get the ability to see what actually got transferred. Well, that took a long time to generate. So there's a transfer slip design that happened to be sitting in my system. This one has 12 pages. That's a big transfer. Now, when you're unholding something, it is really nice to have the unhold button. And I used to be really hung up on the unhold button. And it seems to vanish out of the layout on a regular basis. The point is you don't need the unhold button. You can just click edit. Edit will take you right back to active, and you're now processing that. So here, if I were to change these and hit update, of course I would commit this transfer. If I were to cancel it, I would discard it and lose it altogether. All right, so we just bopped through auto transfer. So you can use, auto PO to generate a PO. From there, you could generate a transfer order. We didn't do that, but we could have. And maybe we'll go back and do it if that's something you guys want to see. And that in turn could generate slips. However, if you have min-max levels and you use those to generate the PO and you're doing auto transfer on a regular basis, you really don't need to generate a transfer order. If you see what I mean, the auto transfer is going to pick those up as soon as their voucher is processed and their on-hand changes and their show is being available in the warehouse. The next time you run auto TO, it's going to pick up those things and send them out automatically anyway. And that's actually pretty common, that people just order them, dump them into the warehouse, and then go ahead and let auto TO pick them up. All right, so now I see you guys, not asking any questions here, and that's okay. Just want to make sure I'm not, putting you guys to sleep, and that you are, in fact, understanding what we're talking about here. We're going to back up here. So we looked at auto PO, auto transfers, So I think what I want to do is skip ahead. I added this to the agenda. It wasn't actually on the original agenda, but I want to add that to the agenda real fast. And then maybe we'll talk about auto min max, because if anything was going to put you to sleep, it's going to be auto min max. Now, best replenishment is a brand new feature of version 9. It did not exist in previous versions of Retail Pro. And it does basically two things, kind of. It's not really auto TO, although it is kind of like auto TO. It does sort of an auto transfer thing. But it either orders product from the vendor, or it suggests transfers from store to store to fill min-max levels. So what it can do is it can do stock balancing. So if it's not available anywhere, it says, hey, dude, you got to order this. If it's available in one store and the other store's out, and it could transfer from one location to another and fill that need, then it'll suggest that we do that. So let's go take a look at this. Now, this looks like it's more complicated. It's in both the transfer and the purchasing menu. And it looks a lot more complicated, but in reality, it is just auto PO and auto TO screens all mixed together. That's really all it is. So if we pop in here and say next, and we take a look again, what are we ordering for? We're going to say everybody, and we're going to click next, and it says, you know, what's the PO date range? So again, here I'm going to suggest that we go, whoa, one day duration, 360. This is. I was playing around here, probably trying to exclude all POs. So we'll say 45 start 15, which is a pretty normal range when you're looking for is something on order. And again, track these if you need to. I'm going to keep it simple at the moment and say no. And we'll click next. And what are we ordering to? Min, max, or custom? Max is fine. Same, do not use min level, right? And what are we going to create? If we build transfers, are we going to do real ones? Are we going to do held ones? Are we going to do transfer orders? We're going to leave it on held. And we're going to say next. And what kind of PO do we want to generate? I'm going to go with marked for multi, same as we did before. And we're going to use today as the order date, tomorrow is the ship date, and we'll say, 30 days in the future for the cancel date on the PO. Same screen as on auto PO. And filter details. So this is whatever vendor we're ordering for. So let's see what happens here. Well, let's see. I don't know. I think we want to be a little careful here. Let's go down to edit this. Let's see. What can we do in here that might make sense? Clear. Let's just take a shot. It's one of those things where I'd prefer not to filter, but if we don't filter, it might take forever to build, and if we do filter, we might not get anything at all. So, we roll the dice, we take our chances, we see what we get, right? All right, so, okay, we got this column here that says use PO. And then we got the store that's the destination, and then we got the source store column. Again, I like to see source on the left when possible. It's because I'm Western and I read left to right. So back up a little bit. So from BR to 1, from store 2 to store 1, right? Now with my weird configuration, I'm getting some oddball suggestions here. That CMP is company. So there must be a store config in the data I loaded that wasn't in my config originally, and it's angry. It's not turned on in my preferences, so it's popping up with CMP because it doesn't know what to label that as. A little embarrassing. But you get the idea here, right? It's going from 4 to 1, from 3 to 1, et cetera, et cetera. See if we got anybody else down here. Looks like everybody's going to 1. That's just probably the data we have. So if we were to click next right now, we would build both a purchase order and a series of held transfer slips. So you see it's exactly the same as auto TO and PO, but it is it's just both combined together, and it does some, like I said, auto slip stock balancing. I can talk today. Really, I can't. Let's see what happens. All right, process complete. Let's click OK, and let's go in. Let's see if we can see the PO even. We couldn't before, so we'll see what happens with this one. Okay, well, I see them. But it still seems to vanish out of the way. Whatever we got going on, I'll have to fix that in a minute, is still going on. Transfers, slips. And held. Well, we got a few more held slips, don't we? Right. Yeah, it's definitely broken up everything. So obviously we want to be a little careful about how we filter this one and do it in more reasonable chunks here, because it's making a lot of little transfers. And of course, you could suppress any of those if you wanted to, just like the other auto utility tools. You could uncheck them and have them not write if we wanted to, or filter them down a little further as needed. All right, so auto min max. Auto min max is a tricky area, so I'm not going to go in too deep unless you ask questions. I want to keep it at a level that we can all kind of understand, because we could easily spend 2 hours on just auto min max, and I could probably bore you guys to death. So I'm going to kind of go over the basics, and if you guys have questions or want me to go deeper, just pop a little something into the chat there, and I will see it, because I got it on my other screen here, and I can see if you do anything. So auto min max is now in inventory, so we have to go either to merchandise inventory or into inventory. And then we should see it on our sidebar menu. It'll either say auto min max, or it might be like I put it in a utilities menu in my own layouts that we roll out from Big Hairy Dog. So it might be under utilities, or it might just be auto min max there on the sidebar menu. And we're having some fun while it tries to open auto min max. All right, so there's our little auto min max utility. So before we even dive into this, I'm just going to say that there's basically 3 steps sort of involved in this process. First step is you go get some sales. Second step is you have a formula. Third step is you put those together and calculate a min max level. So we click this little button on top here, change min max. It says what's the sales range. So I could give it a sales range of my choosing. I could say that's kind of a crazy 45 months, start 15 months ago. We could do 12 months start, let's say 12 months ago. Let's see what range that gives us. Right, maybe we should go back a little farther. I'm not sure if we've got data in that range. Who do we want to calculate for? Right, we could select whatever we need here. As far as stores, we could also filter it. Most people don't. You could filter it for inventory. If you needed to, you could have one sales range for jewelry and a different sales range for apparel, if that makes sense. There might be a reason to do that. All right, so we click next. It brings us in here to the formula. So a formula is basically saying, I need you to figure out a min level, and we've got to say how to do that. So we're going to click New and add a formula, and just going to call it General. Now I can, if I need to, I could filter this. I could create a filter for it and write a filter to this, and probably is a good idea to do that, but let's look at the basics before we go nuts here on filtering. So down here, we have a sales range. For now, I'm just going to leave it on infinity from 0 to 9999. Choose the, I'm going to say greater of days supply. Let's say I can get this product in 2 weeks, and I order it every week. I take a look and order it every week. So 21 days supply is my minimum, because if I fall below that, and then when I make my order, I might be out of stock before I actually get my replenishment in, and I'm out of business then. So I'm going to say 30-day supply or quantity 1. So if I sold nothing in that time period, then it's going to say, give me 1, right? Because the greater of 0, 30-day supply is 0 and 1. The greater of is 1, right? So percent of increase, you got to be careful with that, because if we're analyzing a year, it's going to give us a min level based on a year. So if we order once a year, that'll work out for us. But if we order once a month, we better be analyzing a month if we're using percent of increase. Annualized sales will mess with your head. Out of stock is okay. That just means drop times where we were out of stock in your calculation, because it calculates the selling rate. So if it's out of stock for a period of time, then that just says don't consider that time in your calculation, is what that says. So that's a fine thing to check. Don't have a problem with that. Now you got min down here, and then you got a max. So we're just going to pop into the max and do something similar and see what the heck happens. So we'll do, 45 and 1. So if it's a really bad item, then I'm just going to say 1 is all I want for now. But if it's a good item, we'll let it float up. So we're going to click Next. Guess I should really have some sales, shouldn't I? Let's go ahead and click Analyze Sales, see what happens. Now normally this process here, analyzing sales, is very quick. I am somewhat suspect of my system because I just loaded this data and I didn't update my delta. And this particular process uses the delta to figure out their sales range, which is outstanding actually, because the delta is usually very quick to read and figure out what those values would be. So if it doesn't resolve here, we'll try and stop it and go on. But normally you put your sales range in, you hit Analyze, you make sure your formulas are set up, and then you calc. And it suggests min-max levels, and you review them. Now, I'm going to say the more work you put into those formulas, the better off this is going to be. So the more you filter it to both store and to merchandise types. Different stores have different demographics and sell things at different rates. So, you may have to have a formula for a certain kind of apparel for this store and a different one for that store. All right, I think we've waited for this long enough. Can we cancel it? Yeah, let's just cancel that. And we'll go next. So we've got a formula. We go next again. So hypothetically, we have some sales, not a lot, but we have some of them calculated. Maybe we've got our little formula at the top here. It's active. You can have more than one formula, and you can uncheck that if you want one to run and not the other one. And then down here, you'd say calculate levels. And you would go out and start calculating levels, and we'll see if it can get done with this in a quick second here. We'll let it. If not, we will cancel that as well, and I'll go back and talk about what you do next, basically. All right, yeah, I'm not gonna make you guys wait through that. Great, fine, good. So finish. So obviously, what's going to happen is that it's going to go out here and it's going to put things in this column here. It's going to put things in the new min and the new max column. So it might come back out, suggest that, you know, you have, you know, 23 of this and you know, 41 or something like that, or it might go the other way. The point is you then would have to do a filtered view and take a look at the suggestions it's making and decide if you like them. Now, I'm going to say that if you have some experience with auto PO ahead of time, like if you put a min-max in on a small vendor and you start running auto PO on it, you're going to find that you're either ordering too much or too little, and you're going to adjust your levels manually, correct? Then you're going to understand how to use auto PO, and you're going to trust those min-max levels. Then when you write a formula, if that formula doesn't produce numbers that are consistent with what you know to be viable, then you screwed your formula up. Go back and change it and recalc. Anyway, that's the best way to get your head around auto min-max. What I don't want you to do is get hung up on the auto min-max numbers. You know, if you need 30 days and you end up putting 45 days in there just to get it to calculate the right numbers, don't worry about it. What's important is the results be right for your business, for your culture. If that makes sense. Now, we could certainly go back to auto min-max and we could look at different formulas that say if I didn't sell any, then do this, but if I sold 1 to 6, do that. If I sold 6 to 20, do this. I could have those formulas. You can layer them and you can have different scenarios, but at this point I see that 3 of you guys are not even watching the screen at the moment, so I'm not sure we want to really dig into all that stuff unless it's something you feel like you can benefit from. With auto min-max, you really do have to kind of get in there and work with it, and it's almost better to do a one-on-one training with that particular tool. Otherwise, it'll really hurt you. So, and again, definitely start out small. Start out with a small, controlled set of data that you really can get your head around and work through before you expand it out. All right, so transfers, preferences involved for slips and auto TOs. There is some stuff that we should probably peek at there if you haven't. Let's go in and see. In system preferences at the very top here under company, there is a section for transfer rules, and you can see that we don't have transfer rules turned on for some of the locations. So I'm going to go ahead and turn those on. Anytime you add new stores, you have to go here first and check that. Let's pop down to transfers though and talk about transfers. A few settings here that might be useful with this top one here. If you use transfer orders, this is method from generating transfer slips from a transfer order. Now there's 3 things in the menu there, and they're a little dicey. They are not clear. It seems like the best option here would be on hand, because if I have it on hand, I should ship it, right? But I'm going to put these 3 things in a sentence to make sure we understand what they mean. The first one, on hand, means if I don't have enough on hand to meet the required transfer order, send nothing. The second one means if I don't have enough on hand to meet the transfer order requirement, hey, go ahead and send what I assigned. Go ahead and do it. I'll fix it later. The third one means if I don't have enough on hand to meet the transfer order requirement, send out what I have. Optimize it. Deal it out like cards until you run out of cards. And whatever's left on the transfer order, we'll send next time. So the best choice for this setting is optimize, in my opinion. Now, there are exceptions to that. I have clients that use assigned because they're a very big operation. They're in the middle of receiving, you know, several thousand units, and they know it's here, but they haven't finished the voucher, but they want to start the transfer. So they go ahead and generate the transfer slips, and they start breaking down the load as the guy's typing in the voucher. Okay, that's a legitimate choice, right? Even though assigned is my last choice, it works well for them, but then they have good controls over their inventory and procedures. So again, it works for them. In the transfer order, when you look at the transfer order, there's an item list on top, and then there's the allocation at the bottom. This asks you what you want in the allocation section. Most of us would be best served by putting ALU in there, unless you're 100% UPC, then go ahead and go with UPCs. Item number is the old version 8 item number and would only be present on grandfathered items unless there's a customization you can buy to populate that field. But generally speaking, it would only be populated on the older ones. The rest of these are pretty straightforward. You know, generally I would leave on forms after I update. I'm not requiring comments. I'm not requiring it to reference transfer order. I'm not limiting. This question down here is a big question, and I'll touch on it, but I don't know that this webinar is not really about this particular feature, but this has to do with whether or not we want to do transfer verification. So if we want a safety net and we want to have the system double check our work, which means we have to go into the verification module and run the verification every day. So somebody at the main has to manage the transfers. If that's the case, we want ASN, Advanced Shipping Notice. If we want the system to be automatic, we set it to auto verify. And then there's no safety net. That means if I transfer it from one store to another and the other store misses a mistake, then it just gets missed. It just goes in that way. If they find it, they pick the phone up, they deal with it right then. So auto verify is operating without a net. ASNs is operating with a net, but somebody's got to manage that net. So, and this is really not about that function, although we could peek at it real quick if we need to. Not a big deal. All right. That's in transit. This is verification rules if we're using in that auto verify, or excuse me, transfer verification. And what do we got here? We got preferences involved. Yep, those are the preferences. Slips and transfer orders. Well, yeah, I guess we are talking about it. So let's just go make a transfer slip. Start out with transfer slips is super easy. I hope everybody knows that a transfer slip is probably the easiest document in Retail Pro to make. I mean, you need a source store, you need a destination store, and you need some items, and that's pretty much it. So if we say from a given store to a store, right, and we say throw some items on there, I'm just going to choose some items. Really got to kill that plain markdown, huh? So we'll just throw some items on there and click OK. And we will then click print update. Actually, I'm just going to go with update only. We saw print job before. It's not terribly exciting. So with ASNs, and I'm not going to beat this up too much because not everybody's going to use this feature, so we'll walk through one and make sure we understand it. It kicks what's called an ASN, which then pulls to the destination store. So it shows up in here. And let's see here. Right, so we grab that particular one and we say generate a voucher. So the receiving store, the destination store, opens the box. They see the contents of the box. And then they click generate the voucher. It pops up and shows with quantities on the screen. Now there is an option to turn those quantities off and make them scan the quantities in, by the way. I have mine set to go ahead and populate. If that's something that you guys are interested in, do a little shout out there and I'll show you that preference. But so we then go ahead and say update. Should we screw this up? Let's go ahead and let this one fly. Update, yes, update. Then of course both those go into what's called transfer verification because I have transfer verification turned on. I have ASNs turned on. So we have down here the ASN, the receiving. Up here we have our transfers, and you see this one's mated. So if I click update all, that'll vanish. It'll just go right into history because it balances 100%. Same source and destination store, the documents reference each other, and the quantities on the documents match, so they're 100% in line, nothing's out of whack. If I click update all and they didn't go away, then I would have to highlight them and either click resolve all. That assumes I have some resolution rules, which we didn't set up while we were in there, but you could set up rules to say something like, you know, a variance under $20, let's assume that the receiving store is right. So you could say from any to any, if the variance is less than $20, make the sending document, the outslip, match the receiving document, the ASN voucher. And so, I mean, if it's a small enough dollar amount, I don't know that you want to pay somebody $35 an hour to resolve it at the main. Third option, of course, is to manually resolve them, and that's clicking this resolve button right here. And then you have to make the choice. What are you going to do? You're going to make the receiving match the sending? You're going to make the sending match the receiving? Or are you going to mark it out of stock at either the source or the target? Now, the bottom two do the same thing as the top two. They just also make an adjustment memo and mark it out of stock. So unless you're shipping at UPS and it left your possession, if it actually went to a shipping company and they lost it, then I would use those two options. But if you're using your own truck to move it from point A to point B, if it winked out of existence, then you need to fire somebody. You know, it's either here or there. Most of the time, if you're doing your own goods transport, then it's just a mistake, and it's either at the source or at the destination. So you could easily say, you know, make the receiving match the out, make the out match the receiving, and click OK, and it'll just clean it up. And literally, when you choose any of those options and it qualifies, the same as clicking update all. They just vanish. They just go away. They get filed instantly. But you see, with multiple stores, you're going to be generating transfers every day, and this thing's going to fill up pretty quickly. And if you don't stay on top of this, and do this every day, I mean, let's face it, people don't remember what they had for lunch yesterday, much less what they transferred last week. So that's the slip transfer and transfer verification. Of course, if you set your preferences to auto verify, that whole transfer verification piece goes away. You don't need to ever go here. If you're set to auto verify, it generates the in-slip automatically and assumes that it made it. All right, so these are transfer orders. And like I said earlier, the top you have a list. And if your screen is not configured this way, definitely take a moment and configure it this way. You know, interface, right-click interface, page designer, and then the fields button. Right, that's where we do things like that. So if this wasn't on there, delete. I would go down here and find item allocation, and I would drag it in here. And then I would move it around and pick the little thing and move it over like this, right, and make it look pretty. Close enough. So when I click on an item down here, if I click on this 987651, you see it highlights on the top. If I click on something on the top, it highlights on the bottom. You follow? So I could say, what's the allocation of this item? And boom, it finds it down there, and I can see the allocation down here. Now, why is BR grayed out? Because BR is the source, and technically you can't transfer to yourself, right? So if BR is the from location, it can't hold an allocation. It can't be getting any product because that's the place we're coming out of. So from here, if you generated this either from the purchase order, and on the purchase order you can just click generate PO and select marked for as the method. Because if you have a marked for PO, you want to use those allocations you already made. Or we could use auto TO and we could write a transfer order from there. And then we could, from here, print this out if you guys do TOs and you need designs, my name is Jeff. I have a lot of designs for this kind of thing, and I'd be glad to share them with you, and it's not a big deal. So this particular design here takes the item and breaks it down by store. So you see the first item, the 644 item, 987644, is repeated for the first 5 rows, it looks like. And over here you see the store 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it starts over on the next item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one's saying, from the item, show me the breakdown. So this would be like if one person is going to take one item that's sitting in the dock and put 6 in this store and 6 in this store and 6 in this store, right? Now, the other method is probably more popular. So this is the same exact document broken down by store. So now the primary sort element here in the design file is store. So it says, okay, this first store here, store 1, here's all the items. And then boom, subtotal, and there's your next store, right? So this means little Johnny is going to pull store 1 and little Tommy is going to pull store 2, right? Whichever way, whatever way works for you. And of course, from here, you could, if you needed to, you could generate the slip. So if I wanted to actually write the slips, I could click Generate Slip. And I got some sub-locations turned on, which are not common, and I don't want to waste your time on those. Could filter them. Select your location. Would you like to print a copy of the transfer order? Everybody says yes. Don't say yes. You don't need a copy of the transfer order if you're generating slips. Then you would say, print a copy of each slip if you want, and it would go ahead and start transferring things. So there's, boom, it's just creating transfer slips. We're going to exit, and we're not going to save, and it's going to ask you again what design file to use, probably at least 3 more times, right? Pretty exciting stuff so far, right? You guys aren't like drooling or anything, I'm hoping. Still awake, still, following along best you can. Oh, still another one, huh? Thought we only had 5 stores in that thing. Oh, yeah, I just lost count, huh? All right, so, right, POs, we kind of already touched on this. Drop ship and marked for are, in fact, PO configurations. And they're available on the in the manual. I didn't really point that out, but they are available on the manual document as well. We did look at that in the auto. No, it still doesn't. All right, fine. All right, so if we go to form view here, yeah, we could set this manually just as easily as we could set it for. Now, since I'm here, though, I will take a moment. We know this is allocated to click Generate TO, and you see that it shows up distributed, undistributed, and marked for. Now, I'm going to change something here. Now, yeah, thanks, good. I'm going to change this back to drop ship and click Save, and then we're going to click Generate TO. We can't click Generate TO. Excellent. So they took that away. It looks like earlier versions, if you're on an old version of version 9, you can generate a TO on a dropship PO, but it'll only give you the first 2 choices. And so just to make sure we're all clear here, distributed just takes the total quantity, in this case 134 highlighted in the background. It puts it on the TO but does not do the allocation. Undistributed puts nothing on the TO. It just puts the items but no quantities. Doesn't put the 134, doesn't put any allocation. Marked for puts both the 134 and the allocation. So if you're going to generate a TO, you better be on a marked for and you better have allocation in it. Now, if you're doing your own allocation manually, I will point to the fact that we have an allocation pattern. An allocation pattern is a relationship. So what I mean is that this here says store backroom. Everything goes to backroom. This says 2 to 1. So BR, store 2, and store 4 are getting twice as much as store 1, store 3, and store 5. This says even split. It's not really so even. It looks like some stores are not getting any, but the stores that are getting stuff are getting the same amount. You follow? They're all got a 1. So they could have a 1, they could have a 10. As long as they all have the same thing, they're all getting the same amount. Again, they're a relationship. So there's certainly a relationship between 1 and 2. 2 is twice as big as 1, which is different than having a relationship between, say, 7 and 5, right? Now, 7 is bigger than 5, but not twice as much. If you see where I'm going with that relationship comment. Anyway, you could take one of these and you could apply this to the order, and then if you wanted to go inside it, you could go to item allocation, and you could then massage the results. So there you see we had 7, 5, and then some 2s and some 1s on things. And you see it didn't have an even number of items to give away, so this one here is a little different than this one here. You see what I mean? That's just the way the chips fell. It's a random generation when it gets down to that point. So not sure why it didn't go 4 and 4 though. I'm guessing it just that store 3 drew the short straw here, and that's what 1 would be, and it got whatever was left. It obviously allocates the people that are supposed to get the most first. Anyway, you can flip through here, and you could manually massage these numbers. You could change these allocations if you didn't agree with them. So certainly if you're going to manually allocate a PO, definitely start with the allocation pattern, do a rough or coarse allocation there, and then step in and massage the few that you would like to sort of think maybe could do a better job on. Now, be careful here too, because if I just make this one 12, I'm going to change the overall order quantity. So if I add 6, I should take 6 away. You follow? Unless I want to change my order quantity. In that case, go ahead. By all means, make them all go up if you want. All right, so save when you're done, right? Generate a TO, marked for. Comes back and says TO generated. Man, that is a big PO, isn't it? $14 million. Woohoo. All right, so that's pretty much all that we had in our outline for today. However, we've got plenty of time, so if there's any questions or anything that you guys would like me to go over, or specific situations you'd like me to go over that might shed a light on this process, certainly I would accept any and all comments or questions at this time. Or you could just go ahead and skip out. We're already losing some of our people. That's okay too. I know you guys are busy folks and you got a business to run. Or if there's any other questions in Retail Pro that may or may not pertain to auto utilities, certainly they could field anything like that as well. I've been doing this for a while. Well, all right then. I'm going to say, if there's no other questions, I appreciate you guys attending. Wait a second. I think we have a question. Why are we not able to change ship to address on the purchase order? Yeah, good question. The ship to address is pulled from the store headings. Now, what we do on that, so let's say I wanted to do an actual, what we would think of as a drop ship, not what Retail Pro thinks of as a drop ship, but if we would want to send this directly to a customer, what I would usually do there is I would do a little doc design trick, so I can show you what I do. Okay, purchase orders. So if we take a purchase order, preferably not a receipt size one, let's take one that's, of decent size here. All right, so the shipping address is right there. So I would go up and say File Save As. If you play with a Doc Designer, remember that there is no undo in this particular application. So do yourself a favor and save it ahead of time, right? So we call this one a dropship PO. Then what I would do is I would take these here. So whichever ones I want, let's say I'm going to use 3 of these. So I'll take these 3 right here, the bottom 3, since I'm less likely to use instructions 3, 4, and 5. And I would kill these shipping fields here. And I would paste those into here, like that. Now, of course, if you do that, get rid of them down here, right? And I'm going to close this up. There's no point in leaving that dead space in a design like this. So now let's go try this. Let's go ahead and hit save, and let's go try it out. So let's go to purchasing, purchase orders. Let's see what we got. Something small, preferably. I don't need that $14 million one. That might be a little. How do we get to this document? All right, I will show you that in just a second here. I will go back and walk through that a little slower this time. Wow, that's huge too. All right, let's just make a new one. Then we'll go back and look at that whole. So let's say whatever. We'll just pick a vendor, and we will go choose an item. We don't need much here. 1 item is enough, probably, right? And then I'll walk back through that a little slower. All right, so here we have a normal bill to and a ship to, but I'm going to pop down here and say ship this to, you know, well, 15827. That's our that's actually Big Hairy Dog's address. So we're gonna hit save on that. And yes, that's so exciting. We've got way too many features turned on here, don't we? Oh, that's what happened to those. All right, so there it is. I guess that's the one we just noticed. That's an old one. So I guess that one went someplace weird on me, didn't it? All right, fine. Form view. You get the idea, right? It's close enough. Let's hit save. Really? There we go. Just cut that one down, right? And we'll say save. That was pretty painful. I really need to clean up my retail pro. This was kind of a sandbox for me. I sort of beat the heck out of it all the time. All right, so if I go choose this dropship one that I just created, you see it actually changes the shipping. Now that's staking the system out, right? Now in real life, I still went to tools. We're going to go into Doc Designer. So Tools Doc Designer is just the path on how you get there. It, of course, asks you to sign in. So you put your username and password in. Click OK. Now when it opens, it's going to open up all the tabs. So everywhere in Retail Pro that you could design any kind of document is going to pop up in a tab. So we would then have to click on the PO tab, right? And then in the PO tab, hopefully you will see something that has to do with your company. Like you'd see, like here, I made these for Squaw Valley when we did the Squaw Valley thing. That was a couple of years ago. But we did a really nice thing on that, which I don't know that you care about. We could talk about it if it's something that interests you. But anyway, we took this one here and we copied it. So we opened it up. So I just highlighted one and we opened it up. And the first thing I did was File Save As, so that I'm not editing the original. Because there is no undo here. If you make a change and click Save, that's it. It's done. There's no safety net here. Now, normally in Microsoft documents and things, you can do a Control-Z, undo, and it'll undo the last thing you did and put it back the way it was. No such thing exists here. So do yourself a favor and just do a Save As, give it a new name. That way, if you screw it up, you still got the original. You can always start over. And anyway, you saw the rest of what I did. I found the shipping area, and I deleted out the normal store heading fields. So store heading 1, right there. Let me just go ahead and pop back into Retail Pro and go into Options, System Preferences for a second, down here to Local Stores General. Okay, so that's like the first heading field. Then over here, this is like the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. So you see these heading fields right here can be different per store, if you see what I'm saying. So it just lists all those out on all the doc designs, not just POs. It just literally goes and lists all those out. So you see there's 7, they call them 1 through 7 here, but in fact, in System Preferences, awkwardly, it's store name, and then 2 is actually 1, just to make your head really swim and be all those other fields. It's a little overkill. So you just pull those out and then throw some of the instruction lines in instead, so that when you text edit those, it'll say whatever you want to say to the vendor. Does that make sense? Perfect. Excellent. If you need help with that, certainly give us a buzz. You know, it's not a big deal for us to, you know, we can almost always carve out some time, you know, here and there and help you out with a little doc design thing. That's we do a lot of work in doc design, and doc design is very, very similar to some of the other tools we use, like Crystal Reports. And so, you know, Tanya, myself, Luann are all very versed in all that. No, not a problem. Totally fine. You know, webinars are chances for people to ask questions and to get answers without having to pay for it. And we try to have regular webinars so that everybody has free access to good information. And hopefully we don't bore everybody too much with the topics. We're always looking for good topics, by the way. If you guys have any, send them in. You know, email them in, suggest them, and we'll see what we can do. All right, so any other questions, any other issues, anything else I can go over? All right, then, I guess I'm going to say thank you very much for attending. And I guess we'll see you on the next one. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and wrap her up then, if that's all we got. All right, you guys all have a good day. All right? Talk to you later. Bye-bye.